Well, hello and welcome to the channel. Hillbilly Military Modeling here. And this will be the final video in our Merkava by Tamiya and 1/35th scale project. We'll be doing the weathering and of course the final reveal at the end of the video. So we're going to do some sponge chipping. First off will be the IDF Israeli Sand Gray, which is the base color of our vehicle. I'll put a little bit in the paint palette. Now we're going to lighten this up with a little bit of white. I just want the shade a little bit lighter than the base color of the vehicle. So we're going to mix this up real good and check it and make sure that there is a difference in the tones. A little bit of flow medium will keep our acrylic water-based Vallejo paint from drying out on us. You don't want to make it too runny, so be careful when you add flow medium to it. So this is sponge chipping, and this is the first color that we're going to use in our sponge chipping. And we're just going to go around the edges and areas of interest. As you can see, it's not a real big tonal difference, but it's enough to help highlight the edges of these different panels and corners. We're going to go around on the lower hull as well and add our chipping. So you want to concentrate in areas where things are going to catch on the vehicle and sharp edges, you know, where the paint is more likely to get knocked off. Now we want to keep our chips as small as possible. You can always go back and add more chips, but if you get some chips that are too big, make sure that you keep like a cotton bud and some water nearby, and you can wipe those off without damaging anything. But once this dries, it's going to be really hard to deal with. So if you get something on there that you don't like, you need to take it off right away. So for our next chipping color, we're going to add a little bit more white, and we're going to mix that up really good. And you don't have to change your chipping sponge. You can just keep using the same one, just blot it out. Make sure that you remove all the excess paint from your sponge, or you'll end up with a great big blob. So we're going back over the areas that we've already chipped, but with less intensity, concentrating mainly on corners and intersections of different panels. And these will just put the highlights in that we want for visual effect. Now, of course, you can chip your vehicle up as much as you like. I'm kind of going with it as light as I can. I get carried away sometimes, so if it gets a little heavily chipped, my intention is to keep it really light. And we're going to apply this over all the raised areas too, the hinges especially, any protruding portions of the hull. And I come in with a brush as well and add some scratches. I don't add a whole lot of scratches on this vehicle, but a couple placed here and there helps add some more visual interest to it. I also go in and highlight these bolts on the engine deck, and I do come back in and right around the areas where the bolts would be removed, we're going to take and add chipping right around those sharp edges as well. Now you can add as much as you like or as little as you like. Here you can see the effect that we have where we concentrated the lightest chipping color in those special intersections there on the different facets of the deck. Now we're going to come in with this Tamiya panel liner. This is the brown panel liner. It's a enamel based product, so it's not going to interact with our acrylic paint, which will make cleanup much easier. And we're just going to come in and through all these panel lines and raised surface detail, just put a little bit around it. Now the more careful that you are with putting your panel liner on, the easier your cleanup will be later on. Sometimes I get a little messy with it and I end up having to do a lot of cleanup, but the panel liner should just flow right around the details, and it'll help emphasize and add false shadows to the model. Makes the model look larger than it really is, and it attracts the eye to the different surfaces. Helps bring out those details that might otherwise get lost in the color of the vehicle. Once we're done with our panel liner, I go back in with the Testors enamel thinner. Any enamel thinner that you're using will be fine. A lightly dampened brush, good clean brush by the way. So, we can just blend and clean up any excess panel liner that we don't want on the paint surface. After I do my initial cleanup of the panel liner, I like to walk away from the project and come back a little later with what I call fresh eyes and scrutinize my work. Make sure that I've got everything cleaned up and I don't have a big ugly spot or something somewhere where I don't want it, because in our next step it would be impossible to fix that without painting over. So yeah, you want to make sure that you've got everything right the way you want it before we seal this in. I'm going to use Model Master's acrylic flat clear to seal all of that work in, so that if we have to fix something later on, something in the next couple of steps of weathering that we don't like, everything that we've done up till now is sealed and protected. And so just going to go over the entire model with a couple of light coats of this flat acrylic clear. Now once our flat clear is dry, we're going to come in with this OIF and OEF enamel wash by AK Interactive. It's an enamel based product as well. It is kind of thick though, and for our purpose we're going to want to thin that some. So once again, I'm going to use my little paint palette here, and we're just going to put out however much you think you're going to need. I end up making a couple of batches, but we're going to thin it about 50-50 here with enamel thinner. And we're going to start the process by wetting it with a clean brush and some enamel thinner, and then we'll just come in and add our AK Interactive wash on that. And that enamel thinner base will help the wash to kind of spread out across the surface. And here I'm going to come back in over the hatch and add just a little bit more thinner, because thinner it dries out really quick, so I kind of want to watch that. We're just adding more grime to certain areas of the vehicle. We're not going to wash the entire surface. Well, that's not the intention anyway. So, now it being a enamel based product, we'll be able to easily blend it and then also remove any large concentrations of this product off of the surface. Anything that you don't like. Now when it comes to weathering, of course, it's all about your taste and what you want your vehicle to look like. So I'm just showing you what I'm doing on this one, and you can see here I'm coming back in with a clean brush and blending and removing a little bit, whatever areas wherever I think I've got too much on it. Now we're going to do the same process with the hull of the vehicle. Here I'm just wetting the surface down real lightly with enamel thinner. This is an attempt to try to eliminate tide marks because enamel products, when they run across the surface, they can leave tide marks. So if you wet the surface first with a little bit of enamel thinner, that'll kind of minimize that. You won't entirely get rid of it, but they shouldn't be that noticeable in the end anyway. So when we go to streak this, we're going to want to go in the direction that water would run off. So on slanted surfaces such as this, we're going to pull it, in this particular case, to the back of the vehicle, and then we'll do the reverse slope of that. Now for flat horizontal surfaces, you're going to want to do more of a blending and a stippling motion in the end, because the way you leave it is the way it's pretty much gonna set up. So I'm not too worried about this being what's the word I'm looking for, pronounced, because we are going to come in and dust this vehicle up with dry pigments. So we are going to kind of want this streaking effect to be visible underneath that. This is AK Interactive Streaking Grime here. It's another enamel product. What we're going to use it here for is to show some oil leaks here on the hubs of our road wheels. And we're going to kind of just streak that out a little bit to where it's been leaking, and due to centrifugal force, of course, with the road wheels going around, you know, a leak will run down towards the rim. So we're not going to want to do all of them. Just pick out 3 or 4 to add extra interest, and we'll place those around the vehicle in different areas. We don't want them all together. As the crew services the vehicle and adds fuel, inevitably they're going to spill something. So around these caps here, I'm starting right here with this cap up next to the front of the turret. There's going to be some spills there, and we also have some covers, which are also fill caps underneath those. We're going to add a little bit of that streaking grime, and that'll just simulate the spills that we have from the crew just servicing the vehicle, adding fuel to it, or oil. Now we're going to work on our tracks. First up is Vallejo Pigments Old Rust, and I'm using a stenciling brush to stipple this on. So our flat acrylic paints have a slightly rough texture, so this helps these pigments to actually grab on and stay on the surface. So now we're going to come in with Rust, which is a lighter shade, and we're going to put that on in random areas along the track, just to give it a little bit more color variation so that our track doesn't look all exactly the same color, and this should look pretty good after we get done weathering it. So now we're going to use this Pledge Revive It, and you don't have to water it down or anything. You just put it straight into your airbrush, and we're just going to seal these pigments in because we don't want them to come off right now. We have some more weathering and dusting to do, so we need to fix these pigments in place. And the Revive It actually keeps from subduing these pigments too much, as you can see here. So now it's time to dust up our vehicle. We'll be using Vallejo Pigments Dark Yellow Ochre here. And we're going to use this on the lower hull. This will be right around the suspension springs and the road wheel arms. And we'll also use it around the front and the rear of the vehicle, just on the very bottom. It's a darker, much more yellow looking color. So we're going to keep it just on the bottom, the very bottom of the lower hull. And now a lot of this won't be seen because of the side skirts. Now it's time to put on our road wheels. So I picked the ones with the oil leaks first and kind of put them on, randomly, so that I kind of know where they're at. I don't want them next to each other, kind of spread out. And then we go ahead and put the rest of our road wheels on. And we're ready to go ahead and install our tracks. Now these tracks are, well, they go on in a very specific way. They kind of point in one direction. So make sure you check your instructions and also look at your box art. And you don't want to put your tracks on backwards. And we just go ahead and get these installed. And once they're on, I'm having trouble here, but okay, there we go. Once your tracks are on and going in the right direction, we'll use this lighter color here of Desert Dust, and we're going to start working on our road wheels and our drive sprocket and also our idler. So I just take a little bit of the pigment and put it on the brush and just tap the brush, kind of sprinkle it around. Start off light just in case. You don't want to get too much because then it becomes a little bit of a chore trying to get it off there. But we're just going to take and brush that in. You can always add more later if you think that you don't have enough on there. So we're also going to go and here you can see I'm just tapping it to get the excess pigment off. So they don't have to necessarily be uniform, but it doesn't look too bad. So now we're going to go ahead and use this exact same pigment because we're dusting the entire vehicle up. And we're going to throw this onto the track too, kind of scrub it in. And this is the reason why we sealed those pigments for our rust on our tracks, because I didn't really want these 2 or 3 different color pigments to start to interact with each other. I wanted them to be layered, one over top of the other. So that's why we sealed our tracks in, so we can come back and put the dust on without disturbing anything underneath. Now I do not do the top runs of the tracks or the very bottom where it's going to be sitting on a shelf, because that's not going to be seen. The top runs are going to be underneath the side skirts of the vehicle, and of course the very bottom, it's sitting on a shelf or on a diorama, so you're not going to see that either. So now it's time to go ahead and assemble the vehicle. We're going to put the upper hull on and press it into place. I do not glue this into place because it's a really good fit. And the same way we did on the road wheels, we're just going to sprinkle pigment across the top of the vehicle. And we'll just start off fairly light, and then we can increase more pigment later. So I'm using a nice wide brush here, good and soft, and kind of randomly moving the pigment around. And it's going to stick really good to that flat acrylic paint that's on there. So we just kind of want it dusty on top. And we're going to add a little bit more to the front. Front of the vehicle and the rear of the vehicle is going to be the dustiest. Now we're not going to worry about too much pigments getting into the those screens, those grills, because we'll come back in later on with our airbrush and just kind of blow that out. We just don't want to scrub it down inside there. We do want to make sure though that we dust up our rubber flaps here, and we're going to do the side of the vehicle as well. So again, just sprinkle it, and we're going to want to streak this in an up and down vertical motion, because that's kind of how it's going to sort of settle, and a little bit of if moisture gets to it or whatever. Now I do come in and stipple it really heavy on the very lower edges and on the front of the side skirts, because this is where the dust is going to build up the heaviest, and we kind of want to give it that illusion. Now we're going to come in with this carbon black pigment, and we're just going to use that around our exhaust ports. So there's one on each side of the vehicle, and we're just going to stipple that into place. I'm kind of using this card here to try to keep that black pigment from going all the way down the side skirts of the vehicle. So I did use the same method that we dusted up the hull to do the turret as well, and as you can see, it's dusty and pretty much a good representation of a vehicle that's been operating in a very dry and arid environment. So what my attempt here is to show a vehicle in use, but not abused. And of course, we didn't do any battle damage or anything on this vehicle, but I hope that we met our goal here with this build, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. So if you haven't built a Merkava, I would highly recommend this kit. I know it's an older kit, 1980s, 1983, but it builds up into a really nice kit. There aren't any real issues with it, and I hope that you've seen something maybe in this video that you would like to try on some of your builds. So if you're new to the channel and you like this kind of content and you like what you see here, why not go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified the next time I upload a new update and a new video. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep producing these little videos for you guys to watch, and I hope they are helpful to you. I'd also love to hear from you guys. Leave me a comment in the comment section. Whether you like the build, you didn't like the build, if there's something you think I could do better, I accept all accolades and criticisms. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and stay tuned for a new build. So you guys stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.